Welcome to Late to the Know-How. I'm Simon and this is session 3. Today we will be continuing our party's adventure from Kilvington. But before we do that, let's just go over some errata and housekeeping. Now, I was going over the hex rules a few days ago and I've realised that the terrain type could get me locked into a situation where I'm just rolling the same terrain over and over and over, and that's generally how I roll because it is always that way. So I've added a little feature into it so that if there's, for subsequent terrain types that are the same, there's a bit of a percentage modifier so that we start to get into some different terrain types. Otherwise, we may end up with 6 or 7 terrain tiles, 24 miles each, of just forest, and it might get a bit boring. So we'll play with that and we'll see how it goes. If it looks like it's not working, well, we'll adjust it. But otherwise, I think that's a good idea. The other thing that I did was I added, I printed and painted Boe up just to give her the same color scheme as the other guys. So yeah, just get a bit of focus there. Let's speed these guys out. So yeah. So I reckon that looks pretty good. There's no other real changes that I've made. So I have started the journaling. I did write up the journal for the first day. So essentially what I've written is that the party have had an easy first day. They travelled all day and they reached Chillstone Creek Outpost, met Boe, updated Boe on what was going on, then continued for the rest of the day till nighttime, and then had a really good overnight sort of camp and sleep, and they're now ready for the next day. So what we'll do is we'll roll up the next terrain tile and see what we get, and then start the new day. Alrighty, so the first tile was Kilvington, which we're going to assume is in the forest. The second tile is a forest tile as well, and according to the updated rules that I've generated, is that 2 tiles in a row will bring down the same result by 5%. So we'll roll our D100, have a look on our table and see what we end up with. So 58. So on the table, it says anything that's greater than 40% will be the same tile for our, 45% for our forests. So 58 minus 5% is still only 53. So we're still in a forest area. So what I might do is I'll roll on the oracle to see if the road deviates from any direction. So we'll just roll, well, we'll roll on the hex tool, sorry. We'll just roll the direction tools to see if the road changes direction. And that's just a D100, 53. And a 53 gives us south. So, well, we're already heading north-south. So maybe the road starts to loop back on itself. And let's see if there's which way it sort of loops back, loops around. Let's just do a thing of 1 to 3 is east and 4 to 6 is west. 4, so it's looping to the west. So I'll grab a hex tile. I think I've got one that starts to loop in that direction, and then we'll get going. Alrighty, so I found this hex tile here, which is a road through foresty area that's slightly starts to deviate towards the west. And while I've done that, I've also just drawn in the hex tiles on our hex map. Probably should have started a bit lower, but that's all right. We don't know where we're going to end up, which way we might end up looping around. Who knows? Yeah, so that's our new hex tile. We're going to start to head towards the west by following the road. But what we might do is we might roll on our weather table just to see what the weather's like in the morning. I do have the expected travel speed table, but that kind of will preempt what the travel speed will be, and I kind of want it to be a bit of a more of a, I don't want to know what the travel speed is going to be for the day. I want it to be a bit of a surprise. So we might start doing things like rolling for weather, or rolling, asking the oracle what's the situation of the day, as we go it through each of the stage, through the morning, the lunch, morning, midday, afternoon, and evening phases. So let's just roll on the weather table just to see when they wake up what the weather is like, what the possible outlook is for the day, which is so that's a 6. And 6 says it's mild and there's no effect. So basically it's kind of the same as yesterday. There's nothing hindering them. There's nothing that's giving them any boosts. So they're just going to be walking along or traveling along the road. Now I might ask the oracle, do the characters know how far the next village is away? Now they're going to, but do they know that it's within the next tile, well, within the current tile, or is it like going to be more than another day's journey away? It seems a long time between villages in the forest. Like, because I'm doing the 24 miles per tile per day, it does seem like the world is quite large, and that's fine. It's fantasy, who cares? But what I might do is I might just check to see if the next village or township or civilization is coming up within this current tile, or the next one, because there should be one coming up pretty soon, I'd say. Is the next civilization within this tile? 4, and it says probably no. So we'll take that as a no. Maybe it's on the borderline of this tile and the next one. So perhaps they'll reach the next village by nightfall. So they'll just make it into the next village as they get to the end of the road here. So what we can do is we can say that the next tile will be a village tile, and we can roll on the civilization village kind of tables for that. So for today, though, we want our characters to start their journey along the road. And so for the morning, let's just see if anything happens. Alrighty, so seeing we're hex crawling, we're just going to use the hex crawl rules. And we're just going to roll on the event table, and that might bring up a feature perhaps, because we're basically just walking along the road through a forest. It's a pretty nice day. The party are kind of pretty confident they're going to get to the next village by the end of the day at the nighttime one that we've already determined. So yeah, we'll just roll on an event table just to see if an event pops up, and we'll go from there. So that's a 7. So a 7 is an uneventful day. So basically, the second day of them traveling through this part of the forest is uneventful. So, but that is just for the morning. So we're going to divide, like I said, we're going to divide the day up into basically 4 phases: a morning phase, a midday phase, an afternoon phase, and a camping or overnight phase. So for the morning, nothing happens. Tra-la-la-la-la-la-la, our characters are walking along, they're having a bit of a conversation, not really doing too much, maybe just enjoying the forest. It's very peaceful, especially after that weird storm. Maybe the forest itself feels a little bit, not necessarily eerie, but maybe things have quietened down a little bit, where normally they would be hearing a bit more bird song and stuff like that. Now, so the first part of the day, they're just walking along, enjoying the scenery. Let's just roll now for any midday activities or events that might occur. They've stopped, they're having a bit of a break. They might be sitting underneath a tree or in a bit of an open space, enjoying a bit of lunch or something or other. And let's just see if another event occurs. 1. Dun, 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 dun. So 1 is a hostile encounter. Now this can include a creatures, monsters, some sort of enemy, or it could just be a trap of some sort, like a hazard of something of some sort. So let's roll on our encounter table just to see what's going to happen. This is a bit exciting now. All right, before we get going, let's just ask the Oracle. Well, let's use the Oracle as our main source of decision processing. So the first thing I'm going to ask the Oracle is, do our party notice anything strange while they're having their break? And that's an 8. And so an 8 is yes, a success. So they know they're getting some strange. Maybe they're getting some strange vibes, or they're sitting there and suddenly, even though they were maybe, they were previously walking through the forest and they'd noticed that the birdsong had dropped a little bit. Things seemed a bit quieter. It wasn't completely eerie, but just less than what they would be normally used to. Now they're sitting down and all of a sudden there's no noise. There's no birdsong. The chirping's all gone from insects, and they're like, what's going on? So maybe they are on a bit of high alert. So let's ask the Oracle, just using our inspiration tables, our verb and noun and adjective tables, just to maybe give us an idea of what's going to come up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll on the adjective table just to give us a kind of an idea about what this hostile entity is. So I've got a 9 and then an 8. So 9 and then an 8. We've got something that is clever. All right, let's have a bit of a think about what this could be. So a forest entity that's very clever and also very hostile. Could be a fae of some sort, perhaps, like a red cap or something or other. Yeah, let's have a bit of a think. Alrighty, so the new monster manual, the new 2024 monster manual, has some tables in the back that list creatures by habitat. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick a creature from the forest table, one that just suits with the current theme. Now, I'll use this first bit of combat, this combat encounter, whether it ends up being all combat or a mixture, as a bit of a litmus test on how the balance may end up. I don't mind it being unbalanced, but we don't want it to be a complete washout one way or the other. Now all our party members are all CR2, using my CR2 stat block creation. So I'm going to just grab a CR2 creature, just a single one. We'll just start with that and see what the balance ends up being. If we find out pretty quickly that it's just a total washout, then we might vary how many creatures there are, or we might just have our party go and run away. We won't fudge anything. We'll make sure that everything's above board. But yeah, we might just keep that in mind, because the players the party aren't idiots. They know that if something bad's happening, that to get out of there, and vice versa, we'll have our creatures run off the monster rule set about their reactions and things, and make sure that they're not being played as just dummy hits. So what I've done is I've had a bit of a look, and I think what we'll do is we'll grab the awakened tree. We're in a forest. It's there's druids tending to everything. There's going to be some sort of magical effect on the flora and the fauna, and I think awakened tree kind of suits, especially since we've had some storms come through, and perhaps these entities are they don't know what's going on. They're a bit upset with their limited kind of intelligence, and yeah, awakened trees tend to often be something that not only are created by spells and stuff like that, but could be influenced by the Fae and things like Feywild and things like that. So let's pick the awakened tree. I'll set up the arena with a bit of a map and things, and we'll set up the cameras, and hopefully it'll look okay and be okay. And yeah, let's start our first combat. Alrighty, so this is our map. This is our setup. We've got some trees. We've got our party who are having a rest. Maybe the main road is just off screen a bit. And because the party is having a bit of a rest and not really engaging in anything, they're not going to be surprised because all of a sudden the bird song and cricket and noise, like insect noises, just kind of stopped. But we will let the awakened tree go first. Now, the awakened tree is going to be, we'll make him this guy because he's got foliage, whereas the other guys don't have foliage. So we might make that the reason why he's a little bit angry. As for the initiative order for the party and for the tree after this first round, we'll just use the bracketed stat from the stat block. We won't worry about rolling initiative for these guys. Yeah, so let's run through the first round. So essentially, the tree is going to go first, and then the party are going to act within their initiative order. So they're sitting there, minding their own business, eating their lunch. It goes quiet, when all of a sudden, big rustling of noise, creaking of wood, and this tree suddenly springs to life and moves up towards the party. Now, awakened trees, they can move 20 feet. So 5, 10, 15, 20. So basically right up into the face of our party comes this big, angry tree. They can feel that there's something going on. And we're going to get it to do one of its actions. And it has a slam action. Okay, so the nearest party member to the tree is unfortunately Wolby. We won't worry about any behavioral rules at the moment for the tree. It's basically just going to do a slam attack. Now, we just do the usual rule of rolling the d20, adding in modifiers, and if it meets it, it beats it. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. So it has an attack. That's a 14. Now, straight away, that's a hit because Wolby's AC is only 13. So the awakened tree has a +6 to its an attack roll. So that would have been 20. So that's dirty 20. So that's a hit. So the tree pretty much rushes up to Wolby, bang, does a slam on him, and does some damage. Now the damage of this is 3d6 + 4. And again, instead of rolling, we'll get into doing some rolls later on, but we'll just use the average hit points for those attacks, and that's going to be 14. Now Wolby's hit points is 16, so it really does a bit of damage to Wolby, and this is what I mean. We may have to adjust the CR levels for creatures and versus the party because it might be way too unbalanced. But let's just see how this plays out. So essentially, Wolby is just creamed by this attack, knocks him right down to 2 hit points, and he's just smashed on the ground. Now, the other party members are like, what's going on? But they're pretty quick off the draw, and they get into position pretty much straight away. So next we'll have Lena go next, and she will use her bonus action, or her pretty much just a free action, to get her Eldritch Blade out, and she's pretty much right next to the tree, so she's not really going to do any moves. She'll just go what and go straight into override mode, and then just sort of attack straight away. So let's just see if she hits. Now she's going to just use her Eldritch Blade to do an attack, and because I've given them all multi-attacks, she's going to do 2 of these attacks, I think, in one go. So let's have a look. So the first one was a 2, and that's a +4 to hit. So 6, that doesn't hit. The awakened tree's AC is 13. So she does the first one, and of course I guess she's she's a bit, whoa, she's just seen Warby get smashed and she's a bit unsettled. She just takes a bit of a wild swing and it completely misses. But she has another attack. She writes herself up, has another attack, and it's a 1. So she misses. That's a crit fail. She's totally gone. She's totally off, being knocked off her feet. She's just really unsteady. Next we have Sailorthil. She'll be next because Warby is kind of down on the ground at the moment, or is a little bit unsteady. And Sailorthil will use her greatsword, a melee attack with just her greatsword. So she'll have a swing. She's within reach of the tree, like they've just been sitting around, so they're pretty close. Oh, that was a bit of a roll. That was 11, and she has a +5 to her hit, so that gives it 16. And 16 is definitely more than the AC of the tree, which is 13. So she does hit. Now the tree has resistances, so it has a resistance to bludgeoning and piercing, but her greatsword does slashing and it also does some radiant damage. So her greatsword will do a straight out 10 damage, 10 hit points, and 4 radiant damage. So that's 14 points of damage to the tree. Now the tree has 59 hit points, so we'll take off 14. So that's now down to 45 hit points. So that's a pretty substantial whack on the tree, maybe slicing some of the lower limbs off of the lower branches off the tree. Now also she does have a multi-attack ability, so she's going to do another attack against the tree. So she's steadied herself essentially. She's back a bit, sees what happens, is able to get herself ready, comes in swinging, and then does another swing. And that's a 10, and that with her +5 is another hit. So she does a slam, and then she brings it back up and does another upcut with her greatsword. And again, that's another 14 points of damage against the tree, which knocks it down to 31. So the tree's already taken a substantial amount of damage from her attacks. Now Warby is in the line next, and he's been smashed down, but he still is able to act. We'll say he's prone. We'll say he got knocked down, and he does have a multi-attack as well. But what we'll say is he has to use one of his multi-attacks to get up. And so he's going to use one of his multi-attacks to get up and steady himself, and then he's going to make an attack against the tree. And he's using his mace, which does bludgeoning damage. Now the tree, like I said, does have resistances against bludgeoning, so he's only going to do half damage with any bludgeoning attack. But his mace attack does have a force damage component to it because of his clerical sort of background. So let's just see if he hits first. And it's a 2. So he's massively unsteady. He just swings a bit wildly and totally misses. Now the tree has been wounded. It's got a couple of branches chopped off. There's some sap oozing out of it. It seems to be in a bit of a rage. I'm going to say that it's not really able to sort of make any decision about not attacking. It really just wants to attack. And at this point, we can actually use our behavior rule sets to see what the creature is going to do. So actually, yeah, let's use the rule set and see what it comes up with, because it might be a thing of that it does decide to change its tactics. So we'll just roll a D100, and that's 85. And 85 on our strategy is it does a standard attack. So basically, it's not worrying about trying to defend itself or anything like that. It's going to go. Now with the behavioral rules, when the creature, when a creature or the group party drop below 25% of like their health pool, that's when they start to go, oh, things are a bit, yeah. I might sort of think about, it's trying to escape or pleading or whatever like that. But it's still, it's above that 25%. So our tree is just going to make an attack. And is it going to change who it attacks? We've got a targeting table, and we'll see if it's going to change its attack. 65, and it says vulnerable, and so that means it's going to attack the weakest party member as it can determine. Now it's just smashed Warby into the ground, and he's unsteady. So I think it knows that Warby is going to be the next one that it's going to attack. Now Warby's only got 2 hit points, so Warby could be walking on the side of the light, so to speak, after this attack. But we'll see what happens. So the tree makes an attack. It's a 9 plus 6 is 15. So it hits Warby. So Warby is now down for the count. Now it's not double his hit points, and I'm going to have to read up the rules. I'll do a bit of a break and read up the rules about dying. But he's not dead, but he's down. he's out. And so we'll just leave him there. And the tree's not going to move or anything like that. It's obviously in a bit of a angry state. And that essentially is its turn. It doesn't really have any, bonus actions or things like that. It's not going to try and move or anything. So yeah, the next attack is going to be from Lena to do an attack. Now she's going to use. Let's just see what she's going to do, because she might decide to help Warby, but she can't. She hasn't got really anything to help him with, so she's just going to focus on taking the tree out. So she swings with her multi-attack. She's just going to use her Eldritch Blade attack again. It's 18, which is a good hit, plus 4, 22. So it definitely hits. Now her Eldritch Blade gives her 6, and then she can choose cold, fire, or lightning as some extra damage on top of that because of the Eldritch part of it. Now, does she know if awakened trees are vulnerable to anything? Because they are actually vulnerable to fire. And I'm kind of guessing that, working with druids and being schooled by the druids, she would know that they're going to be have a vulnerability to fire. So she's going to make a swing with her blade, and she might just call out fire attack. That's pretty lame, but let's just go with that for now. She does fire attack, and then she hits, and so she also is going to do 3 fire damage. So she's doing 9 damage just off the bat, and I'll have a look at what vulnerable damage does. So yeah, vulnerable just basically doubles that kind of damage. So the 3 fire damage that she did is actually 6. So the awakened tree now is down to 22 hit points. So, and part of its limbs are possibly on fire. So that's her first attack. So she's going to do a second attack, the same kind of attack. She's going to yell out, fire attack! I'll have to change that. I think it's a bit lame, but let's see what happens. It's a 12, and she has a plus 4. So 12 plus 4 is over the AC of the tree, 13. So she hits again. So she does 9 points of damage plus the doubling of the fire damage. So it's 12 points of damage. So the tree is down to 10 hit points straight away. So within that first couple of rounds, we've lost Warby. He's unconscious, and we'll have to make a death saving throw next round, or the start of his round now. And the tree has gone substantially down in hit points. Now, will it sort of try to escape? Well, it's not really its turn yet. It's Sailorthil has to have a go. So let's see what Sailorthil does. So she might go. She can see that Warby's down. So instead of her making an attack, she might decide, well, I'm going to try and heal Warby, and bring him up to health. So she does have healing hands, which she can then touch Warby and inject some hit points back into him. So we might get her to do that. Now, so she turns away from the creature. She drops her longsword, and she's going to do healing hands on Warby. All right, so we're going to roll 2d4. 4 and 1 is 5. So Warby goes up to 5 hit points. He's still on the ground, but he's not dead. And because he's been healed, we won't worry about going through the dying. We don't need to go through the dying thing because it was his turn next. And for his turn, we actually might get him just to recover. He might just basically just stay on the ground and just go, oh, and that's kind of all he's going to do. He's been just smashed out of it and gone unconscious and been sort of, brought back up to health a little bit. So that means that it's now the tree's turn. And the tree now is definitely below 25%. So let's think about, what should we do? Should we, is it still a bit aggressive? It's still angry about things, about what's going on. The party don't even know why they're being attacked. It's just going to be like, well, what's going on? So we'll just use our behavior tower. But what we'll do is we'll have it say that there's more of a chance of it perhaps realizing that this is not good, and possibly running away or trying to flee. So we're going to minus a 10% off the strategy. Well, that's 16, and minus 10 is 6. So it's reckless now. It's just gone. It's obvious. It's gone into some sort of berserkery type rage. It just is like, nah, I'm committed essentially, and it's just going to attack. Now, will it? As part of the reckless, sorry, it does actually change the attack. So it's kind of lost focus on Warby. It maybe has noticed that Sailorthil has, cast a spell on this guy and saved him. Maybe it's just going to change its focus to her. So we're going to roll to see an attack on Sailorthil. 19, well, that's definitely a hit. And as we saw, it does a substantial amount of damage. 14 damage to Sailorthil. Now, Sailorthil's armor class was 18, so it's definitely a hit. And she has 19 points of damage, 19 hit points, sorry. So she's now dropped down from 19 down to 5. I'll work it out eventually. So she's on 5 hit points. So she's been... This tree must have some really thick, heavy... It's a hardwood tree, perhaps, and it's just really heavy, and it's just been able to bring so much force against the characters and really smash them out. And she hasn't even had a chance to react. Now, she actually does have a reaction, which is when she gets hit by an attack roll, and while she's holding a weapon, she's able to add 2 to her AC against the attack. Now, that 2 to her AC, which is 18, takes her AC up to 20, but because it's got a +4, a +6 to its attack, it really pushes it over the limit. It takes it up to 25. So she still, even though she maybe can sort of try to defend herself with her sword, it still does substantial damage. It still hits and does substantial damage. So she's knocked, she gets knocked down, not knocked down, but she gets some damage done to her. Now that leaves, it's now Lena's turn, and well, she's going to do what she needs to do. She's going to attack. She's not really going to try and have any conversations with this creature, because it's basically just knocked one down and really hurt the next Sailorthal, knocked Walby down, hurt Sailorthal. She's just like, I've got to defend. It could be me next. I've got to defend myself. So she's going to attack with one of her multi-attacks, using her Eldritch Blade. And she does a swing. It's 8. 8 plus 4 is only 12. Now her AC is 13, so that misses. So she's going to have another go. And that's a 19. That's a 19 there. So that's definitely a hit. Now a 19 with a hit, that does 9 points of damage. So this tree is now on 1 point of damage. Now, it's now Sailorthal's turn. So Sailorthal is going to have a go, and she's like, she can see the tree's had limbs lopped off. It's part of it's on fire from Lena's damage is more than 9. It's actually 12 because of the doubling of the vulnerability of her fire damage. So actually, at this point, our awakened tree is completely stumped. No, it's a burning stump. Yes, it's been killed. So that's the end of the combat. And what we'll do is we'll clean this up and we'll do a bit of a post-combat discussion. Alrighty, so we'll assume that the party are now going to spend an hour and have a bit of a short rest. And during that time, both Walby and Sailorthal will roll some of their hit dice just to get some of their health points back. So I'll just do that now. 6 and 6. I'll just do that for both of them. Just makes it a bit easier. So we'll just add 12 to each one. So that's pretty good. That brings them back up a bit. And also what I'll do is I'll make sure that when we go and do the long rest, I'll change the hit points that I've had originally down for them, because I just used the mean value for the hit points. I'll actually just up it to the full value that they would get. So Walby would end up with 27 hit points. So I'll adjust that from the 16 that I've given them previously. The other thing that what we can do now is we can basically ask the Oracle, while they've been hanging around getting themselves fixed up for that hour while they're having that short rest, does anything come to try to explain what is going on? So we'll just roll on the Oracle, just ask the question, does anything come along to help explain the current situation? So we'll grab our D10, wherever it may be. There it is. Let's just see what happens. So we get a 3. And a 3 says no, but. So there's something maybe triggers them to go, well, this is not right. They're part of the Druid Enclave. They know that there's awakened trees around here, and they know that the trees can get defensive about their parts of the forest. And they also know that the next little village is just at an afternoon's travel away, and that there are people there that could help to explain what has happened. And so what we can do is we can just basically have them trek to the village at the end of the tile here, and ask some questions. While we're doing that, we can just, I don't think we'll worry about hex crawling for the rest of the day. We'll just say that they've healed themselves up. They're on a mission to get to the next village. By the end of the day, they've been put back a little bit by this bit of combat. And they've had to rest a bit of extra. So they're kind of double timing it. We worked out at the start of the day that the weather was fine. So they're not really going to be impacted by anything like that. They're just double timing it to get to the village. And they get there without any issues. And I think at that point, we might say, let's call it. So when we start our next session, they'll be coming into the next village just on night time, and we'll go from there. So thanks for joining for the first combat. Did pretty well, I thought. So anyway, have a great day, and we'll see you soon.